hello Crafty Crandall fam. On the day that I upload this, I will have just turned 30 years old, which is crazy to me. I am both very excited and kind of shocked at how fast the time has gone. So I just wanted to talk about 20 things that I learned in my 20s. This is going to be a list of 10 kind of pieces of advice or like lessons that I've learned, and then 10 skills that I've learned in my 20s. Probably the biggest and most important lesson that I have learned, and honestly have only really learned recently, is to savor every moment of what you have. All of the good times, all of the, maybe not the good times, but like the times that are just like you're content, you're happy, you're moving forward with life. I feel like there are so many ways that we get bogged down in the difficult things or the things that aren't going well that we forget to really appreciate the things that are, and appreciate the time that we have when we're not stressed about those things, or, you know, the upsides of the roller coaster ride of life, if you will. So that would be my number one biggest piece of advice. I didn't want to save it to the end because everyone tends to click off early, so I wanted to go through it right away. As far as skills, the first skill that I really kind of took on in my 20s was painting. I had been drawing my whole life, but I had never painted anything until I was, I think, 23? And I had just completed an art class and really enjoyed the art class, but kind of wanted to try something new. In that class, I learned a lot of portraiture and just drawing techniques, and so I kind of discovered YouTube around that time and wanted to learn from some of those creators as to how to paint. So that was really a big skill that I learned in my 20s, and obviously it has led to this channel. Another important piece of advice that I've learned in my 20s is to just do it now. Don't procrastinate. Procrastinating used to plague me in my 20s, in my early 20s, and especially in my teens when I was in high school. Oh my gosh, I loved procrastinating. It was one of my favorite things, is just like putting it off until the very last minute, and then like 30 minutes before the class do the homework or whatever it was. But I have really tried hard and kind of learned this mostly in college, but even more so as an adult, to just do it now. Like if there's dishes that need to be done, do them now. Don't let them sit there. If there's something that needs to be put away or unpacked, just get it done right away. This is super important both in my work and in my personal life. The next skill that I learned in my 20s was weightlifting. Weightlifting is something that I just really love doing, and I wasn't really taught anything about it in school or anything, or it wasn't until I was in my 20s and I started learning more about fitness. I tried to like lose a bunch of weight, which didn't work out well because I lost a bunch of weight and I just looked sick. I didn't look good. So I kind of learned from my mistakes, and through researching and learning more, that I needed to start building muscle. That was where my body didn't look the way that I wanted it to, and so I turned to weightlifting as a method for building muscle. And I am so glad that I did, because it has helped me achieve so many of my goals, both physical and just kind of physique-wise, mentally, just to be a little bit more happy with myself as a person. Kind of along the same veins as do it now, not later, I would say another great piece of advice that I've kind of picked up in my 20s is to not put opportunities off. Like, don't say no to an opportunity because it is scary or because you think that now's not the right time for it. Say yes, take the opportunity, and learn from it. Learn everything that you can. There are so many things that will get kind of thrown your way, and if you say no, you'll get used to saying no. You won't say yes to the next one, even if it is the right thing and it is the right time, because you were so scared from the first one. So say yes to every single opportunity that comes your way, learn from it, and if you don't like it, if it's not a good opportunity, if it's not something that's really helping you, then make a decision to take a different opportunity or make your own opportunity. But don't just put opportunities off, do them as they're offered. Another skill that I've learned in my 20s is budgeting. Budgeting is so important. I never used to budget, but I've always been very good with money. I never really understood that what I was doing was essentially budgeting just in my head. But honestly, now that I have like a steady income and I have set expenses, fixed expenses, I budget everything. I know exactly how much money I have at all times, and this has really just helped me to have the financial peace of mind that budgeting allows you, so that you know what you can and cannot afford, and if something comes up that you want to do, you know immediately whether or not you can afford to do it. This is something that is so important, and I highly recommend every single person go look up some personal finance videos on YouTube to learn more about budgeting. Kind of on the topic of budgeting, I also would recommend investing now. Start investing. If you are of an age where you could be investing money, do it. Because you will only thank yourself for that later. I'm not going to give you any financial advice, I'm not going to give you any tips, but seriously, highly recommend. I wish that I had started sooner, and I'm sure that every single person who invests anything now would say the same thing. They wish that they had started sooner. There's a reason for that. Heed that advice. And if you're in your 20s and you're not investing, start doing it. The next skill that I learned was how to build a website. So I actually had a little bit of experience in WordPress building a website for a portion of the college that I went to. So I was an office administrator, and part of my job was to maintain the website. So that was really great experience in trying to learn the skill of building a website, which I learned in my very early 20s. And then further, in my later 20s, I decided to build a website for myself with Wix. So CraftyCrandall.com, if you've never been there, I don't really plug it. It's in the description of all of my videos, but I never really tell anyone to go there because, I mean, there's no real reason to, other than to like connect with me a little bit or see my work. But website building was a skill that I learned in my 20s. My next piece of advice is you cannot be productive 100% of the time. This pains me to say even now, because although I know it's true, this one is a really hard one to hear and like a hard pill to swallow, if you will. I think that in today's day and age, we are just all so pre-programmed to want to be productive 100% of the time. And so relaxation kind of takes a back burner, and it's so problematic. I have so many days where like I get down on myself because I'm not being productive, or I'm not doing 100 things at once trying to get everything done. I'm not painting, I'm not filming a video, I'm not practicing guitar, I'm not doing something that is fulfilling in my life. But honestly, at some point you just need a break, and it is okay to not do something productive. You can take a nap, you can sit on the couch, do nothing, you can contemplate life, you can read a book. Honestly, reading a book, I never think of reading a book as productive, but it is something that I love to do to relax, and it is honestly a little bit more productive than just sitting and doing nothing. So you're doing something. Don't get down on yourself for not being 100% productive all of the time. I think that this next one should be obvious, but one skill that I learned in my 20s is videography and YouTube. So I started my YouTube channel 2 years ago, and it has been such a fun experience, and I'm so glad that I kind of forced myself to learn how to do this, and I just started. That is a huge piece of advice that I've given several times, so it's not technically part of this list, but if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, if you're thinking about starting a new skill, if you want to learn something new, just start. Just start. Just go do it. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need, anything to start doing something. If you want to learn piano but you don't have a keyboard yet, start Googling videos on what the first steps are to learning piano. That might give you an idea of whether you really want to do it or not before you invest in a keyboard. So I can go on and on with examples, but just start. My next piece of advice is one that my boss kind of had to teach me, and that is that all mistakes are learning opportunities. He actually put on my office a quote, and I don't have it memorized and I don't have the physical thing here, but it's basically that you need to stand on top of your mistakes, don't try to carry your mistakes above you. Try to stand on top of your mistakes so that you use them as learning opportunities. You don't let them crush you from above. And I just think that that is such a valuable lesson, and it is something that I've gotten a lot better at, but still do struggle with, and I just need to keep reminding myself, when I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's a learning opportunity. Every single human being on this planet makes mistakes, and if you use it to learn from, then it gives value to that mistake instead of just being a waste. The next skill that I learned in my 20s has been more of a recent one that I've taken upon myself. I think I've been doing it for maybe 4 years now, and that is playing guitar. I love playing the guitar. It is so much fun, and I highly recommend it as an instrument. I started playing piano actually as well. However, I didn't like that as much. I wasn't as good at it, and I didn't really want to learn a new language, if you will, in that you have to learn how to read music. So instead, I quit that, which is terrible, but that doesn't mean I can't come back to it later. And I started learning guitar, and guitar has just been a lot more accessible and fun, and is really the instrument that I am drawn to pursuing longer term than the piano, although I think that the skills of the guitar can help me kind of reintroduce myself to the piano maybe in a different way, in that I don't learn how to read music and I just learn like chord piano. It won't take me as far with the instrument, but at least I can have fun doing it, and I can kind of use my understanding of chords from the guitar to apply to that. My next piece of advice that I've learned in my 20s is that if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And this one has been really hard to learn. Specifically, I guess I mean this in terms of people. I've had a few different friendships and a few different relationships where it's been like, I just don't feel right. And so either I didn't feel like myself, I felt like I had to change who I was, or something about it just nagged with me over time. And instead of immediately understanding that and kind of cutting that tie, I kind of just kept trying to work with it within the confines of that relationships, but it just didn't work out. And I think there was a reason for that. Not everybody is meant to get along with somebody else. I just think that we all as human beings have conflict with somebody else. It's just the way it is, and if a situation doesn't feel right to you, then you're probably better off getting out of that situation. The next skill that I've learned in my 20s is jump rope. I never thought that I would be the kind of person to jump rope. As a kid, I was terribly uncoordinated. I couldn't hula hoop, I couldn't jump rope, and any of those types of activities I was just awful at. So now as an adult, I like to jump rope as part of my workout. It's a really good cardiovascular workout. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. And it's just something that, again, I never thought that I would do, but once one of the people in my life introduced me to it, I was like, wow, this is a great activity. How is now no one talking about this activity? It's just a lot of fun, and there's just a lot of variations that you can do on it to gain more skills with it. I'm just getting my boxer shuffle. I'm trying to get better at it, and it's just a lifelong skill that I feel like you can continuously improve at. So it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend you check it out and try it. Kind of along those same veins is my next piece of advice, which is that the little things matter most. Little things like jump roping, painting something, playing the guitar make me happier than I think a lot of the big things that happen in life. Like, there are just so many things that we all strive for, and as soon as we get there, it's like, okay, but now what? Now what's the next thing? Whereas with the little things, you can kind of appreciate the small moments a lot more easily, I think, than the big moments. The big moments are more about anticipation and like the journey to get there, whereas the small things you can just immediately appreciate and are really just, I don't know, better. Whenever somebody does something small for me, like even if they don't realize that they've done it, that means way more to me than like the big things that people do. So take that as you will. It's just something that I've observed over the years and kind of wanted to note in this video as something to think about. The next skill that I have learned in my 20s is hiking. I love hiking. This is something that I never did as a kid. never did in my teens. I actually had my first hike when I was a researcher in college, and our whole research group went out for a hike, and it was the most amazing thing ever, and I have since gone on so many more hikes than that. It is such a fun activity. It's really great exercise. It gets you out in nature. It gets you just appreciating the beauty of new places and the world. I really just feel like it's an activity that's accessible for pretty much most people, and is cheap. There's not a lot to buy. I mean, yes, you might want to invest in a pair of boots, but other than that, you're pretty much good to go for most like less technical hikes. I know that there are like poles that you can buy and like all this other fancy equipment, but I'm not talking about those types of hikes. I'm talking about like your run-of-the-mill, easy, beginner level hikes here. Go out, get hiking. It is a fantastic activity if you have anywhere near you to do it, or travel for it. The next thing that I have learned in my 20s is that experiences matter more than things. This is just 100% true. Every single good memory that I have was an experience. It was not a thing. Experiences are just so important, I think, to invest in, and are something that I personally value a ton. I spend way more money on experiences than I do on things, and I think that this is just how everyone should kind of budget their money. I'm not telling you how to live your life. If you like buying things, then by all means go ahead, but experiences are just things that you can look back on and appreciate. They challenge you in new ways that you would never anticipate, and they just bring a lot of value to your life that I think people who get wrapped up in things just don't acknowledge or see as much of. Another skill that I've learned in my 20s is kayaking. Kayaking has been such a recent joy of my life. I had not gone kayaking until I was, 25? Something like that. So this was like mid-20s to late 20s at best. And I've only gone probably 3 or 4 or 5 times now, but every single time it's just so much fun, and it is an activity that I definitely plan on continuing in my 30s, and one day would like to have a house so that I can store a kayak and actually go kayaking in more places than just the places that you can rent a kayak, because thus far I've only rented a kayak. So that's my goal someday. I really want to continue to pursue this activity, as it is just so much fun to get out on the water, have just the peace of being on the water and experiencing nature. It's a great exercise. It really works your upper body, which is something that hiking and other activities don't do as much of. So it's a really good balancing activity for the other activities that I already do as well. My final piece of advice that I've learned in my 20s has also been a little bit difficult to kind of retain internally, but that is that it is okay not to have everything figured out at this point in your life. You might feel a little bit lost, and trust me, I know, I do too, especially with the recent events, but even just in general, as a 30-year-old person, I don't think that I have my whole life figured out. I don't really know where I'm going. Like, I know my short-term goals, but I don't necessarily know longer term what I'm going to be doing with the next 30 years of my life. I mean, that's a long time to consider, right? I can only just begin to fathom what 30 years looks like, let alone trying to figure out what the next 30 years it looks like. So it's a lot. And just know that if you're feeling like you don't have it all figured out, that's me too. And with that, that was my 20 things that I have learned in my 20s. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love to hear what you guys have learned. What are the biggest takeaways of your current decade that you're living in? And what advice would you give to me? I would really love to hear it, and I would appreciate the feedback in the comments below. Please like this video if you liked it. Consider subscribing to my channel if you're interested. I post new art-related content every Tuesday. Hit that notification bell if you want to be notified on those Tuesdays when I post. And other than that, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Bye!